Beware negative programming. Hey everyone, I'm Matthew Cornwell with Get Taped here in Atlanta, Georgia, one of Atlanta's original audition taping services, which I co-own with my amazingly talented, beautiful wife and best friend, Brooke. And now on to our topic. Beware negative programming. Two quick notes before we get started. One, I'm doing this video early in the morning, thus the deeper register of my voice. And two, if you hear some noise, my HOA is doing a rejuvenation project in the neighborhood. So that's going to be great. Anyway, recently Brooke and I finished 2 back-to-back Sam Christensen workshops. And don't worry, this won't be an advertisement for those. We have plenty of videos that are. But there's a certain concept that we touch on in the workshop that I thought would make a good topic for discussion today, and that is negative programming. It starts at an early age. You've just gotten to the point where you can crawl or maybe walk, and you go over to the hot stove, and right before you touch it, Mom smacks your hand away and says, "No!" Or maybe you're a bit older and you're out playing in the yard and you decide that you want to run across the street, and a parent yells, "No!" And in those early days, negative programming is quite literally about survival. The adults have figured out that hot things, sharp things, and fast-moving cars aren't really good for life expectancy. However, what happens is that negative programming continues throughout childhood and adolescence in ways that can become not so helpful. For instance, you're a young child and your parents take you to a restaurant and they warn you before you get into the restaurant, please do not behave a certain way. Or your grade school teacher or middle school teacher says that your rambunctious behavior is unacceptable. Now, they may have a point to an extent, but it becomes a slippery slope. In fact, depending on the voices influencing you in those formidable years, you may even hear the most egregious form of this negative programming. It might sound something like, "You're not good enough to do this, or to play that sport, or to be in that club," or even worse, "You won't amount to anything." Lord have mercy if you were exposed to any of that growing up. And while we're talking about the man upstairs, there's a fun little catchphrase that we love to use when talking about this negative programming, which is, "God don't make no junk." What do I mean by that? Well, aside from those survival lessons in your early years, this negative programming can evolve into an assault on your very humanity. And it's insidious. It creeps into our subconscious and lives there for years and years. Decades even, growing stronger and stronger, sometimes long after you thought you grew past that, or matured out of it, or just generally dealt with it. But as Brooke and I have seen time and time again, people are carrying these false narratives with them into their adult years, oftentimes without even knowing it. Now, if this topic resonates with you, it probably is better suited to talk with a therapist about it, but there is one final point that I want to make about actors. You see, the normal people out there, i.e. the non-actors, the non-artists, don't really have a great way of dealing with this negative programming in their adult years, which often leads them into the very capable hands of a therapist. But actors and artists in general have chosen vocations that not only allow the full expression of our humanity, but it requires that we embrace our full humanity. In fact, through empirical evidence gathered over many years of teaching the SAM workshop, but just working with actors in general, I can say that the very thing that you were taught to believe was ugly or junk or something that just shouldn't be shown to the public is probably the very thing you should be making money off right now. You may have already booked roles capitalizing on this very behavior, but were you aware of it? Did you sense that the director or the casting director was nudging you further and further into this part of your personality? Did you still try to hide it, even though they were poking and prodding and encouraging you to let it out? Are you still running from those characters or that type of behavior? And how can you be sure? If you're really in tune with yourself, you can look at some of your past bookings, or heck, even some of your past self-tapes, to see if you see a trend. And hint, look at the auditions where you spent 0 time prepping for the role. You know, when you got a same-day audition due at 5 p.m. and you have no time to do your normal prep. So you basically just say, well, all I can do is just be me. And even if you can't identify any of these trends or themes in your previous work, that's okay. The takeaway for this video is that you got to be careful about this negative self-talk that is likely a result of some of that early negative programming that is preventing you from being fully human, fully yourself, when you hit that record button. Because as those of you know who have come to get taped, we present a judgment-free zone where we will simply encourage you to be fully yourself. And it saddens us when actors think that we're just placating them or flat out lying to them. We're not. We just see you for you, and we want you to let that shine through. If only we could all be that gracious to ourselves. Take care of yourself. That's it for now. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on set.